The November Claims Committee meeting to order. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Donegan,
Present.
Councilman Riley,
Present.
Councilwoman Mazzulli, Councilwoman Jermaine, Councilman Vice President Ferry.
Present.
I'll entertain a motion to approve of the minutes of the September and the October Claims Committee meetings.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. At this time, there are no business before the committee carried over. At this time, I will entertain a motion to enter into executive session pursuant section 4246(5)(a)(2) pending litigation.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. We'll enter into executive session. Motion to seal the minutes of executive session.
Motion to seal the minutes of executive session.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Seeing no business before us this evening, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Ayes have it. We are adjourned.
Nice job. Okay. It is Thursday, November 17th. I'd like to call the monthly Public Works Committee meeting to order. Madam Clerk, could you please take a roll?
Councilman Riley,
Present.
Councilwoman Vargas,
Present.
Councilwoman Renzulli, Councilwoman Marino, Council Vice President Ferry,
Present.
Councilman Campiano.
Present.
Okay. I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please take a roll.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry.
Yes. The first item on the agenda is committee business matters carried over, and we have something that I put on the agenda for the Garden City Alliance people, and Director Pizzullo has so graciously come to offer to speak about this for 5 minutes. It's about an update on Costco being developed in Chapel View and traffic concerns. So Director Pizzullo, if you would please speak, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Okay, first, congratulations, all of you, on your recent victories. So a crazy season, then it's finally over. Okay, so let's talk about Sakanasa Crossroads. So for Costco, there is no proposal for Costco at this point. There's no further information that's been submitted other than the application that was, what was that, 2016, 2017. So we haven't got anything new. There have been discussions though. At this point, the master plan for that big box, whether it's Costco or whoever, the condition on that was that the applicant would need to come back to the Plan Commission for an ad hoc stage. They need to come back before they can even go to the next phase, which is preliminary. They have to do this ad hoc stage, which it was specifically conditioned on them looking at traffic in the area. Traffic and studying all of the intersections in the area for the impacts on the road network. If the Plan Commission was satisfied during that time, they would fulfill the condition of master plan and then be free to apply for preliminary plan. So the way that process would work is that the applicant would need to come to planning with a fairly robust traffic study, looking at all the different intersections along Sakanasa Route 2, as well as Pontiac Avenue, and assess the impacts for the big box. That study would then be peer reviewed by my department at the developer's expense. We would then go back and forth with the findings and then present them to the Plan Commission. So none of that has happened at this point, but that is the process. So, you know, I think there's quite a few things that need to happen before, you know, the application comes back. Even if it came back tomorrow, it would be a long time before we'd actually get it before preliminary. But like I said, this study has not begun. There's certainly been no peer review. There's been no further applications. So, you know, I think that, I don't know if that puts anyone at rest, but it's a status quo that it's been since 2017 for that proposal. However, what's not status quo is what's happened on Sakanasa since we approved that big box and what's called the fountains at Chapel View. That's when we had approved Topgolf, and that's when we've approved the rest of 100 Sakanasa. So, you know, 37 has finally started to take shape. That was years and years in the making. So quite a bit of the status quo has changed since we did that. So all of this is going to have to be, you know, reviewed in full detail, and it would be, you know, fully engineered detail at that point, and then we would we'd move forward. So does that more or less answer the question about where we are at this point?
It does for me.
Okay. Any other questions on these guys?
Anyone have any questions for Director Pizzullo about that topic? We will go into public hearings later if someone is online or here and would like to speak on that. Is there anyone on the committee or on council that would like to ask him any questions?
through the chair, comment. I appreciate you putting this on there. And we all know something's going to go there. It's not going to stay a pile of dirt. And traffic is a huge concern, especially in that area. The development has been wonderful there. It's helpful to the city, but we have to have the infrastructure to support it, or people are going to stop going to these places. Saconaset Crossroads is a tough road. Right now, it's near capacity. I would say we don't want any more traffic in or out of there. So whatever new comes, we have to find a new way to move that traffic through. I don't think that the Route 37 updates are the end all be all, but I think it immensely helps the situation.
Right.
And also that line on Pontiac Avenue down past Burger King. So as long as you guys are on top of that, I'm very glad that we're looking into it, because something is going to happen there, and we can't put 12 pounds of in a 10-pound bag.
Right, and I'd just like to say, we've already approved the master plan for the big box there. So that's already gotten master plan approval. This is a big issue for the plan commission. That's why they took, at the time, it was an unprecedented step to make them go into an ad hoc phase. And a phase that doesn't exist in the code or under state law. They're saying that you can't even apply until you get this next phase done. I would say the fountains, when we say the fountains, that's the site between Chapel View and 100 Saconaset, is really the last net generator of traffic along this stretch. So, the stretch has a lot of activity, literally, close to a couple million square feet of activity in this area. So when we talk about congestion, when we talk about traffic moving, there's a lot of jobs, there's a lot of businesses there. I think one thing that people are upset about when we talk about traffic is that traffic for no reason. Like, why is there congestion when there should be none? When we have a couple million square feet of activity, yeah, that's kind of a reason why we can't expect to buzz through Saconaset. Like, there's no stopping. So we have to calibrate our expectations in terms of these decisions have been made for larger scale impact developments, especially 100 Saconaset, Top Golf, all the 9 yards. But we also factor in things like Citizens Bank, industrial facility that is closed. That was 4,000 employees in one shot. We've essentially gotten used to the new traffic flow minus Citizens for a while, so, one status quo goes to a new status quo, and now we have to prepare for the next one. So there's a lot of things we have to look at, and I think you can be assured that we're going to put these issues through the ringer, and you're all welcome to attend and be part of all the discussions when we have them. And but for this particular site, it might be quite a while before we actually talk about this one again. So, okay.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Okay.
All right, we really appreciate you coming here tonight.
Sure. I'll see you all a little later for ordinance committee.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda was put on by Councilwoman Jermaine. Was the administration prepared to, I know she's not here tonight, but we would like to still status and update on the Budlong Pool Project, referred from 9/26/2022. Director Moretti?
Good evening, everyone, and congratulations, and look forward to the incumbents. We have differences and all that, but everyone is a good person on this council. Everyone's heart is in the right place. And just having that is something to look forward to. And I'm sure the people made the right choices. So certainly look forward to working with you and the members that are here this evening. And that's with all sincerity. As to the Budlong Pool, within the week or two, we should have the architectural drawings, if you will, or renditions of a pool concept. And I believe along with that may be some cost estimates. So we don't have that now. I think we reported the last time that it's Secosha is doing some drawings with the instruction from Director Bernardo. So within the couple of weeks or so, we should probably have an update, and certainly we'll give a call to the council. Whatever members would like to be involved in that, we'd love to have you join us with what's presented.
Okay, any questions for Director Moretti?
Actually, it's more so, well, through the chair, would it be then appropriate, I would say also to you, Council Vice President, given the fact Councilwoman Arnice Germain is not present this evening, probably leave this as it is, and given the fact you said you have maybe a few other developments happening within the next 2 weeks or so, I think it would be fair to leave this on at least for the next one or
Sure.
the next council meeting.
Madam
you.
Clerk, could you please put this on the agenda for the next meeting also?
And just to know, I'm sure we'll be contacting her after we've gotten a chance to take a peek.
Any other questions? Thank you, Director Moretti. Next, I'd like to open up public hearings. Is there any, oh, I'm sorry.
Intervale, crosswalk.
Sorry about that.
No, good. It's
Next
Councilwoman.
item on the agenda was the status of the Aqueduct and Intervale Crosswalk and timeline for the implementation of the ordinance.
Yeah, that's Councilwoman Germain's also. She's probably noticed it, but it has been installed. An expensive one, as we mentioned, because you had to cross 2 streets. We had to construct the sidewalk. It has been completed. We got it in before the winter weather. So it's installed with concrete, the handicap accessible pads that are in place along with the sidewalk. So it's completed.
Any questions from anyone about that? I have a question. Did you get a fiscal note on that? I mean, what was the total cost?
I don't have the invoice in yet, but it's in the vicinity of low side 25, high side 30,000.
You said that was more because it was a double.
It was really a double the way, because the way the intersection went, it was crossing over aqueduct onto an island. And the sidewalk had to be was built on that island and then crossed over onto I forget the name of that street, but it was really a double crosswalk.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, I'd like to open up public hearings. Is there anyone here in council chambers that would like to speak on any matter on the docket tonight? Okay, I'd like to see if there's anyone on Zoom that would like to speak on any matter on the docket tonight. Okay,
Pauline,
she wants. Pauline DeRosa, if you want to speak, we're opening up public hearings. Would you please raise your hand?
Pauline DeRosa.
Good evening, Pauline. If you'd like to speak on any matter on the docket tonight, you may do so. You have up to 4 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me this evening?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My name is Pauline DeRosa, 97 Cypress Drive. Good evening, Council President and council members. I just wanted to say I do appreciate Director Pizzulo's remarks. And we do understand that the potential for a Costco is in the far distant future, but it is important that we address this now. And I do want to make a statement. In 2000 and 2001, the Capianata Group approached the city of Cranston with a proposal to build a Home Depot at the former Daywall building site, also known as the former Citizens Bank building at 100 Saconaset Crossroad. That proposal was eventually rejected because of traffic concerns. So we are a bit perplexed about how the potential for a Costco warehouse some 20 years later would be an acceptable development, given the fact vehicular traffic has increased in ways we could not have imagined. In Chapel View and Garden City Center have both seen intense growth over the years. In 2016, there was mention of a big box store, such as a Home Depot and Lowe's. Mr. Kelly Coates, now president of the Capianata Group, stated at that time, quote, "Those particular stores would not fit the environment that Capianata seeks," end of quote. But at a plan commission meeting in 2017, the traffic study for the fountains was to include the following intersections: Saconaset Crossroad at Chapel View Phase 2 / Costco West driveway, and also the same for a Costco East driveway. We see here a pattern of many changes when discussing a big box store coming to the Chapel View complex. With the potential for a Costco warehouse and the completion of Topgolf in mid-2023, we envision a steady flow into the daily traffic with an increase on weekends. We believe there will be a significant surge in transient vehicles as well. I will repeat myself once again, along with Topgolf, the addition of a Costco warehouse is overdevelopment at its worst. Residents demand their council members give this potential major land development intense consideration and scrutiny and do the right thing. We want our quality of life to improve, not deteriorate. We do appreciate, however, that the Copinato Group will be bringing forth a robust traffic study plan, and we hope that it will work for us in our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, either in council chambers or on Zoom, that would like to speak to any matter on the Public Works docket?
No public comment.
Okay, I close public comment. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have 4 utility pole requests from Narragansett Electric and Verizon. Narragansett Electric. Can I have a motion to put those all together, to vote on them all at once? As a block?
Motion to vote as a block?
Second.
Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please take a roll.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry.
Yes. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the block? Before the motion, I just want to tell you that every time we have poll requests, I do talk to Director Bernardo, and he sends out Justin, the engineer, to check all the locations to make sure that there aren't any obstacles or anything that's in the way. And I have not received any correspondence on any of these polls like I do sometimes. So just before, so would you like to speak, Director Moretti?
Just to add to what you're saying, they have been, they're gonna be 40-foot tall wooden poles, and there's gonna be no significant brush or tree removal in the areas.
Thank you.
Through the chair.
Yes.
For clarification, if you see the link as to the map of the request, on each request is a stamp from the chief engineer, and he signed it as approving it. That's the approval.
I just wanted to let everyone be aware of the fact that they do get, the spots do get inspected every time. All right, do I have a motion to approve the block?
Motion to approve the block.
Second.
Any discussion on any of them? Madam Clerk, please take a roll.
Councilman Riley,
No.
Councilwoman Vargas,
Yes.
Councilman Campiano,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry.
Yes. Okay, next item on the agenda was an update on utility construction in Knightsville. It was put on there by Council President Poplaskis. Did he defer that to you, Director Moretti?
I could be happy to speak to it. I could also talk to him offline on this, but I'd be happy to provide an update if you wanted that.
If you're prepared to give a quick update, we would
Yeah.
be glad to hear it.
It'll be quick. Yeah, there were basically 3 utilities doing work there for sewer, gas, and water. The sewer slip lining, it's called. Basically, it's like putting having a catheterization in your heart. It's basically, it's a newer process, less expensive, instead of having complete removal and installation of facilities. That's been completed. In terms of province water, they had some work that needed to be done. They're describing it as 95% complete, basically just removing some steel plates and some patches, but that work will be done very, very shortly, probably within a week or so. As to, there's also some gas lines that require some work, some gas leaks. It's probably gonna take over the winter time. It's projected to last approximately 4 months or so to do all the work that they have scheduled to do. So if you do the math and if weather cooperates by the early spring, they'll be completed.
If I have a question for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I've gotten a few calls from people that stretch of road from the gazebo up to the Rotary was paved last year. And now it's totally destroyed. So people are asking me, who's paying for that? So I'm asking you, who's paying for that?
Yeah, I will find out about that. I have the same question. There was to be quite frank, there was the prior Public Works Director, I guess had a different, perhaps didn't look into the work that the utilities wanted done, and I will have to find out and get back to you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Director Moretti on that topic? Councilman Donegan?
Thank you. Under state law, did the utilities have to come back and pave it curb to curb, right? On their dime, or?
If I have it correctly, if the utility companies initiate it and it is not for tie-ins would be a different story where patching is acceptable. But if they were to do the work on their schedule, then the answer is absolutely yes. We've asked to expedite that, if you will, so I'm not quite sure. Any work in the area we wanted to complete, so we'd have to find out sometimes there's a trade-off with them.
Through the chair.
Councilman Riley?
Thank you. Director Moretti, does that fall under state purview, or could the city put an ordinance through saying that even tie-ins have to be curb to curb? Or do we not have the jurisdiction for something
I'll
like
ask
that?
council if they disagree with me, but what I've learned, if you will, I've been told from Public Works, that's a state law that was implemented.
That's correct.
Any other questions? At this time, I would like to have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Good night, everyone. Next meeting is ordinance, which will start in 5 minutes.
please take the roll.
Councilman Riley,
Present.
Councilwoman Mazzulli, Council Vice President Ferry,
Present.
Councilwoman Vargas,
Present.
Councilwoman Jermaine, Councilman Campiano.
Present.
This time I'll entertain a motion to approve and dispense with the reading of the minutes for last month.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas.
Yes.
Councilman Campiano.
Yes.
The first matter on tonight is carried over. That's matter 8. I'm sorry. It's matter 8-22-02. I was asked by Council President Paplaskas, who is the sponsor of this, to continue this one month. So I will entertain a motion to continue this 1 month.
Second.
Motion to
Motion.
continue.
Second.
Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry,
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas.
Yes.
Councilman Campiano.
Yes.
Thank you. At this time, we are going to take public comment on each issue separately. And the first matter before us tonight is ordinance 9-22-01. And that is the change of zone of 747 Pontiac Avenue, in which I sponsored. I just wanted to take a minute to explain any zone change that anyone puts forth, they need to have a sponsor on. So generally, the legal department will call one of us if it's in their area. Solicitor Ralston had thought this was in Ward 6, so he called me. I am happy to sponsor anyone's ordinance that has no inference as to what I will do, whether I will approve it or not. It's just a courtesy so that everybody has an opportunity to be heard. So with that, I understand there is a presentation that the planning department wants to do. And Director Pizzolo.
Good evening. Doug McLean, Principal Planner. Jason, did you want to say anything? Oh, I was just going to say, we have the presentation ready to go on that laptop. I don't know if we've resolved that issue yet. Are we able to be a member of the presentation so that we can run through the slides?
Yes, you should be able to. I just added you, giving you permission to talk. So I believe if you just pull up your screen and then share it, it should go through to everybody.
Doug's going to handle the presentation. Join as panelists. Great. Yep. Great. All right, good evening, committee members. Sorry for the technical delays. We thought it would be valuable just to give a very brief 5-minute staff overview of this ordinance petition. And provide you with some of the slides that give you some graphic examples of surrounding conditions as well as a site plan. Any of these slides, I'll move through quickly, but they're here as a resource so that you can revisit. Any members of the public or the applicant can revisit as they see fit. What's before you tonight is an ordinance for a zone change. The subject property is 747 Pontiac Avenue. The zone change is to change it from the A6, which is a single family zone designation, to C2 with conditions. And I'll get into the details of what those are as we move forward. But essentially the applicant, in conjunction with this zone change, has proposed a master plan application. That master plan application is seeking to reutilize this existing office building for apartment complexes. They're seeking for a total of 18 apartment units. There would be a mix of 1-bedroom and studio units. And there is a requirement that 15% of the units would be affordable housing, deed restricted as affordable housing to meet the state requirements. So moving through the graphics, actually, before we get into any of the visuals, just for the purposes of this committee, as well as anyone interested, this is the review process that has taken place, as well as where it will go from here. This has been subject to a pre-application, a joint site walk between the council and the plan commission. Just 2 nights ago, it was reviewed by the plan commission for both an ordinance recommendation, which was a positive rec, as well as the master plan application, and it was approved at the master plan stage. That leads us to tonight, which is the ordinance committee, and then you can see the schedule moving forward. Certainly ordinance consideration, and should the ordinance petition be successful, it will move through several more series of review of the development scheme itself through both a development plan review committee and the plan commission. Some brief graphics, just to give you a sense of the surrounding properties. This is the orange outline highlights the subject property, and the black line indicates what's a 400-foot radius, just to give you some context. There's a better aerial view of the subject property and the existing conditions. There's an aerial 3D view of that. In a sense, the petition is seeking to keep that existing building there and just reutilize the existing footprint, the existing shell of the building. All of the changes to the building would be interior. There would be no new buildings added as part of this petition. There's a street view to give you a better sense of how that looks from the street on Pontiac. This is a zoning map, so this is important to consider. You can see the subject property and the surrounding properties are all zoned the same. They're all zoned A6. Again, that's a single family zoning designation. I would note there's a series of non-conforming properties in the area. This current property is non-conforming. It's an office use. So that's essentially not consistent with the existing zone. There are a number of other commercial uses along Pontiac Ave. So there are some non-conforming uses mixed into this existing zoning format. Here's the future land use map. This is from our comprehensive plan. It outlines what the city's vision is for this property moving forward. You'll note that it's pink, whereas a lot of the surrounding properties are yellow. Yellow indicates that the city's vision through the comprehensive plan is to keep that residential. The pink indicates that the city had indicated this property could be rezoned to neighborhood commercial services. So I would say that out of the range of neighborhood commercial services, that indicates a C1, C2, or C3 zone are appropriate. Those would be consistent with the comprehensive plan. What the applicant is seeking is a C2 designation. So in effect, this is bringing the property into greater conformance with the comprehensive plan. And that the C2 condition does have, or the C2 does have those conditions. The 2 conditions are that you get the uses allowed at C2 with the ability for this applicant to seek the 18 residential units, and also that 15% of the units should be deed restricted as affordable. So those are the 2 conditions that are added on to the base zoning for this property. There's a look at the site plan. Not much is changing on the site. The building is remaining. They are restriping some of the parking and adding some landscaping and redefining the back of the property. This is a staff analysis. It's a wordy slide. Some of the content I've already covered. I'll just note that we have reviewed this for consistency with the city's comprehensive plan. It is consistent with that future land use map. That was that map that allocated this with that pink designation, neighborhood commercial services. We found it's also consistent with the totality of policies within the plan's housing element, which is supportive of density bonuses and affordable housing in circumstances like this. This project is unique because there is very limited development that's being proposed. The primary work is to the building's interior. And staff is of the view that the project is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood based on the limited changes to the site, based on the introduction of residential uses. So we're changing from office uses to residential. A lot of the surrounding neighborhood is residential. So we think that that's a more compatible use. And that there would be a reduction of traffic and parking demand for the new use, which is multifamily apartment, compared to if that office building was fully utilized. A fully utilized office building would generally generate more traffic, more parking than the building if it was fully utilized for apartments. And here's the Plan Commission recommendation that was voted and approved just on Tuesday night. And it's a wordy slide, but it basically says, based on the required findings, that's the finding that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan and that it adequately addresses the purposes as detailed in the zoning purposes section, that's 1704-010. An additional context here is that based on the fact that the proposal is a reuse of an existing building with no new building additions or major site changes, and based on the fact that the proposal includes 15% affordable housing to further the city's stated affordable housing goals. And then upon motion, the City Plan Commission voted, it was not a unanimous vote, but did vote 6-2 to send a positive recommendation on this ordinance to the City Council. So that concludes the staff presentation and we're available for questions. And I'm aware the applicant is here as well.
Thank you. At this time, before we go into further public comment, while we have them, I'd like to give the committee an opportunity to ask the planning department any questions that they may have. Yes, Councilwoman Vargas.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you so much for the presentation. I do have a few questions for you, if at all possible, provide a response to. Actually, I'll start off with, there's a 6-2 recommendation. Is there a reason as to why Mr. Frias and Miss what is her Lamfair voted against the positive recommendation?
I'll give you my best description of what I think their reasoning was. I don't want to put words in their mouth. I don't see either of them here tonight. I think that it's fair to say, while the majority of the commission felt and agreed that this, was consistent with the spirit of the comprehensive plan and that it was compatible with the neighborhood, I think they had perhaps didn't have that same feeling. They felt that it perhaps wasn't compatible with the neighborhood. I think really the idea was that apartment units to them didn't seem as a fit in this neighborhood. So I think that that's the best way to describe it.
Okay, so thank you for that. My other question is, I think you had mentioned there is that condition, right, where they are coming before us for that zone change with a 18, I think apartment, or I think as noted in the documents as well, possibly 18 one-bedroom apartments, and then the rest are studios. That condition, given the fact that they're also at some point in the near future requesting it to go from 18 units to 21 units, is that part of this vote tonight? If they were to change it from 18 to 21?
It's an important thing to note and distinguish. So the applicant is actually only seeking 18 units tonight. And they have a master plan proposal that is only seeking 18 units. City staff, in reviewing this in an abundance of caution, while the applicant was conceiving what this could be and they were drafting their ordinance, city staff said you may want to add the ability to develop more units. And if they were to do that, they would need to come back in front of us for more development review process. I think this was the idea, to give them a bit of a buffer above what their ask was. That applicant is not seeking 21 units at this time. They're only seeking the 18. Out of the 18 units, 15 would be one bedrooms, 3 would be studio. And that applicant may change that mix, but they know it's going to be one bedrooms and studios. And we know out of the entire 18 mix, 3 or 15% would be affordable. So the applicant's not seeking anything above that, but we gave them the buffer in case their plans had changed or an interior fit out had changed through the course of the process. I hope that makes sense.
Got it. So they would have to come before the council in order to change that from 18 to 21, possibly.
Well, no, they're seeking, the ordinance right now is baked in to seek 21. But if they wanted to up from their current ask of 18, they would need to come in front of the city. But that would go in front of the plan commission. Essentially, the zone change is asking for a bit of a buffer. The applicant's not seeking that buffer at this time, and they may say that they don't see it in their vision in the future. I think when they were considering it, city staff, suggested add a buffer in the ordinance to ensure that, this accommodates you if you need to add another unit. And the applicant may be able to speak to that themselves in terms of their vision of
Thank-
number of units moving forward.
Thank you, because I know the chairman has a quick follow-up to that, but I'll follow up after on the affordable housing part.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman. I'm just a little confused. They came forward and said, hey, I want 18 units. Is that correct?
They came forward and said, we'd like to do multifamily. They came forward initially and said, we think 18. I can see Jason's making his way to the the podium. I think he had the idea behind giving a buffer there, and he may want to speak to that.
Yes, I really would like to know.
Okay.
Wait a minute, let me ask the question.
Sure.
Why, and is it even in your powers to say, hey, build more? They're asking for 18. We know we have a neighborhood who's upset about this. And our city staff says, hey, why don't you do more? That's real.
Well, based upon, we're reviewing this. Based upon the mix of the site, single and studio would have less parking requirement. If they wanted to change their mix to more studio than single bedroom, we would have essentially the site would work for parking for those types of units. We typically do this to give applicants headroom whenever we do zone changes so that we don't have to go through this rezoning process again. Doug's absolutely right. Their proposal is 18, but if they change the mix to more studio and they could fit out with the limitations on the site for parking, then they would be able to do the 21. Again, that's not the ask. This is common whenever we've done special rezones, Garden City, Chapel View. It's very common for us to say, if you're asking for 50-foot height, why don't we put 60 into the code? Just so that we don't have to go back to the city council if it's 51 or 52, because these are zone changes. These aren't variances. So that sums it up. It's within your purview to just, change a number back down to 18, and staff has.
I understand what our
Staff
job
has no
is.
issue with that, but the issue is if they change their mix and they could do the 21, it would work. But it's totally your purview.
Thank you.
Sure.
You have the floor back. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So if we do move forward, I guess not move forward, but in this proposal right now, that 15% of affordable housing is based on that, then 18 unit, not the 21, which really would be 2 apartments, right?
So based on 15%, if they had 18 units, 15% of them would mean that 3 of those 18 need to be.
7.
If they actually ended up building more, I think if they got 21, then they need to give us 4 affordables. So essentially, if the applicant kept building, the 15% remains static, and we always round up, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, I was wondering.
if
Yeah,
it's
'cause-
like, hey, 15% of 18 is 2.7, or I don't.
That's
what
exactly what it
we
is,
always
2.7.
round up. So once you trigger, the need to go more than, or if it doesn't hit even, you round up. So they always, I know at 21 units, if they did build that, actually they'd owe us 4 of those 21 would need to be affordable. And keep in mind, it's not 4 additional, it's 4 of the unit. So out of the 18, it's not 3 additional, it's 3 of the 18 that need to be affordable.
And so at that point, does the developer then decide whether it's going to be the studio apartment as affordable or the 1 bedroom?
That's the process they go through with Rhode Island Housing, and I know Rhode Island Housing says that essentially they want to see the developer adequately mix the affordables amongst the other units. That's a determination when they go through with deed restricting these that Rhode Island Housing views and establishes if it's appropriate from their standpoint for the affordables to be studios, a mix of studios and ones. That's their purview.
Now, if this was not to pass, I'm sorry, to pass, but then the development does not get executed, what else is able to go in place of the proposed 18 or more units?
So if this was not to pass, then they're left without the ability to do apartment complex at all, multifamily at all. So there's no version of putting apartment units in that building that could move forward. What they would do, and this was part of the discussion we had 2 nights ago, was the developer is currently, working on renovations to that building. They certainly want to bring that building into greater utilization. That building has needed some help for a while, and they're injecting some money into it. They would then market it as office. And the suite of different offices they could get, whether it's, nail salon, other personal services, insurance office, dental office, medical office. They could reutilize the building for those purposes. I believe that would be, I don't want to speak for the developer, but I think that would be their purview in terms of what they could do next.
Doesn't,
If the zone change doesn't pass, their vision, I think the developer bought this with the vision to want to do apartments, but they understand that if this zone change doesn't pass, then they'll work with the next highest and best use, which I think they would utilize it, try to fully occupy it for office.
okay, so I think my question, and I can come back to that later on, but it would be if this does now pass though,
Mhm.
and this specific project on the proposed 18 units does not get built, what would then, can they build something else?
I kind of understand your question.
They would build a single family, right? So would they just be able to build a single family? They wouldn't be able to build anything else at all if the zone change was to pass and they did not decide to build that 18 unit.
So it's a good distinction to bring up. If this zone change does pass, but the developer, decides they don't want to move forward with that concept, then they can move forward with other uses allowed in the C2. So the C2 grants them a range of other uses. The developer's vision, and they're moving forward, and that's why we tie the plan commission decisions to the ordinance. The developer's vision is a specific one for the apartment complex. They've spent their time and energy investing into that concept, and they've essentially reached the first stage of approval of that concept with us. Now, moving forward is contingent upon this zone change passing, but they're giving you the vision of what they would do with the property, which C2 does allow multifamily by right. So essentially, even if this passed and they didn't build 18 units, they could still build another range of multi or other commercial. Their vision is to build this with the 18 units. Based on their research, they think that would be successful and successfully fit into that building.
Thank you. I have one last question. I have two more, but I'll only ask one. So that way my colleagues here in the council are able to also ask. To the administration, do you support this position? Does the administration or through maybe Director Moretti, I know it came with a positive recommendation from the Planning Commission, but I was just wondering, what's
The administration does
take?
not get directly involved, as you know, and largely supports the city council. So the administration will support the city council's decision. So it's deferring to the city council.
Thank you. And then I'll give it back to you, Chairman, and I'll ask my other question afterwards.
If you have more, go for it.
Down list of questions. So my other question is, the way it's been proposed in terms of the planning that we have, that's that yellow lot that was highlighted. That is the actual lot, but there is another additional lot right behind it. That's not
Correct.
part of this.
Yeah, I can show you. So essentially, if you see that yellow highlight, that's the subject property. This property had been subdivided earlier this year. They did break off one lot. It's don't think my cursor is it. There it is. It's showing. Do you see this lot right here?
Yes.
That lot had been subdivided, and that lot, the applicant's intent, and they own both the lots, and their intent is to build a single family home on that single parcel. That parcel does meet code. That parcel fits with the neighborhood. So their goal was to build a single family home there, and then utilize the remaining section, which that subdivision has occurred. So now we're only focused on the singular lot, the yellow lot that's in front of you. That's the only lot that's subject to this zone change. And they're using that single lot to basically accomplish their project. It leaves them with enough parking. So essentially our code calls out that for multifamily apartments, you owe us 2 parking spaces for every unit. So although these, units are smaller scale and they're 1 bedrooms, they're giving us 2 parking spaces for every unit. And that is accounted for even with a bonus extra space. They owe us 36, they're giving us 37 within the confines of that lot highlighted there in yellow. Hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Thank you, sir. If there's trees or anything on there, would this be the meeting that we can ask whether those trees are going to stay where they are? Are they knocking any of that down? I'm just curious.
Well, details of the landscaping plan, we do know it's the applicant's intent to enhance landscaping on the property. They would owe us a full landscape plan at the next stage of development, as well as all of the engineering details, stormwater reports and the like. And they could certainly, I think the applicants could speak to their vision for landscaping. We've reviewed some of their other projects that they've done, and they typically do make a project that's attractive for the neighborhood. They've stated in public meetings that they do intend to enhance landscaping. But they could speak specifically if there was a tree that you were looking at or any certain questions.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank
Yep.
you, Chairman.
Anyone else have any questions? Councilwoman Renzulli?
Thank you. Am I missing a traffic report, or was there no traffic report? That's just based on where it is?
No traffic report was provided, and we generally don't require a traffic report if the change in the use is essentially known to reduce traffic. So what we have on the ground, if this office was fully outfitted, that would probably cause us to want to understand if they were changing it to another commercial use, if they were going from residential to office, that would cause us to want a traffic report. We would want to see how the increase in traffic could be accommodated. It would be known that if this use was fully utilized, just, commonplace knowledge in our field is that residential creates less traffic, even at that same unit density, than office would.
Okay, I only asked because I got several calls from neighbors who see it a little differently, because if it was and I can understand, so I'd like, professional opinion. And if it was an office building and people are coming to work nine to 5, say,
Yep.
they might come in the morning, leave for lunch, come back, and then leave at 5. Whereas it becomes a residential apartment unit, people are coming in and out all the time because people work different jobs, different hours, have people over for dinner, have people over at 2 a.m. That's their business, so they can do whatever they want, but it could cause more traffic in that sense. And the concern from the people who have called me is that, they're going to be cutting through the neighborhood. And so that's just what I would like to address.
Sure. I mean, I can only reflect on a couple of things, and I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm a planner that, is very, looked at and reviewed traffic reports. I can tell you that with office, we generally would also account for not just the people working in the office, but a series of, how many visits would they get, how many customers, how many clients, the range of office services they have, if there was a nail salon in there, if there was some other service that had a higher turnover, you might see customers coming in and out more frequently. But in general, residential as a use doesn't generate that many trips. We did want to look and think about parking pretty closely. For example, in other projects where we've done multifamily, you might recall 661 Park Ave, the Legion Bowl project. That included a request as part of the special zone to reduce parking to 1.5 spaces per unit. They gave us a lot of background information to show that that's actually even still conservative. They were showing us that they could do it at 1.25 spaces per unit. Because in general, these one bedrooms, mostly it's a single occupant. Maybe there's a couple, some couples in there that have a couple of cars, but in general, it's some people might not even have a car. They're not asking for parking relief. They're saying, we're going to give you the 2 units per space. So, I know that was something that also came up, was discussed quite a bit. So, we feel as though they're giving us ample parking. And then in terms of the traffic, I'm not going to make a discussion of like whether a residential use would cut through streets more frequently than an office use. But, we do find that in general, residential is less traffic, less trip demand. You probably have less frequency of trips. Sometimes people will be in and out of their house 5 times a day, but often most times it's, 2 or 3 times a day that someone's coming in and out of their house. That can be far less than a business that has a high turnover rate. So that's part of the rationale, and that's part of why generally we understand that when you go from commercial to residential, we don't ask for a traffic analysis because it's just known to reduce traffic. I hope that answers your question.
Oh, that totally makes sense. I can see it, from both sides, because I can see that at night it might have, more traffic in and out than somewhere, even if you had nail salons, that stuff doesn't open past 7, you know what I mean? So I think that people are maybe thinking that way. I would ask, would I have to go through the police department perhaps to get, accident data right on Pontiac Ave over there? This was a concern of someone specifically who called me that said there was a lot of accidents over there, and I just can't really verify that on my own, but I don't know if that's information that came.
You could certainly get that from the police department,
Okay.
if you were seeking accident reports. It's not something that came up to us in our review of this. But again, when we review the project, I think we understand that there's a desire to reutilize this building, to bring this building into full use, whether it's office or whether it's residential. If it's left in full use as office, I think my estimation is, while they wouldn't owe us anything, that actually would be just, hey, they go right back to business and they find tenants. That would be where you'd really want to understand if they were really utilizing that building for office, what are those traffic impacts? So the same question as to accidents and the like, I think those questions will be also merited when you have higher trip frequencies with commercial types of uses. But I mean, the police would be a source if you wanted to ask. When we were doing our review, it didn't come up to us and no information came to us in terms of that specific concern or anyone asking for that research from our purview.
Thank you. And I promise I would have already done it if I didn't get the call like late in the day yesterday. My final question is, if this did stay as an office use, you had mentioned, a nail salon randomly, would it be able to be any kind of office use where they could have all different units, a nail salon, an accountant, a masseuse, anything
Sure.
could be there?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, they're granted what was, grandfathered in. So they're working with the understanding that, office was allowed. And there was a range of different office uses in there. I understand there were some personal service types of offices in there as well. So what has occurred in there in the past can occur, and it can occur with, if they could fit it, it could be 10 different nail salons. It could be one nail salon, one insurance office, one physical therapist. There's a lot, one dental office. There's a wide range of what they might accomplish. And it really, at that point, just becomes like, how would they outfit the building differently? What would the various tenants want in terms of space? But they would be grandfathered, essentially, those same range of uses that have occurred in that building in the past. So we certainly understand that the building right now is not being fully utilized. I think that's probably a reflection on the condition of the building. But we understand if they're bringing that building into greater conformance, they could outfit it to meet a number of different potential tenants.
Thank you so much.
Any other members have any questions? I just have a couple. You said the single family house that was being proposed to be built, that's going to be handled separately?
Correct. Yeah, it's a separate property. So the subdivision has occurred. And that lot is set up so that that could be done through a building permit process. I don't know where they've done. I don't think they've established it. I think they know that they had stated at a previous meeting that it was their intent to build it. That they were going to build it. They may sell it, once they have, but I think they were going to be the builders. I don't want to speak for the applicant. I think that was stated at a previous meeting.
Okay, because when we were at the site visit, that was an important component, I would say, because that kind of took the brunt off the current single family homeowner who had no intention when they bought their home to live next to an apartment. So they were creating essentially a buffer.
Yep.
If this were to go forward for me, I'm certainly going to motion to amend that be conditioned upon them building that. Because it creates that that buffer that the other homeowner expected when they reviewed the zoning and purchased their homes.
Okay.
Secondly, I just want to touch on, it says in the revised memo, and I'll just read it, a corresponding comprehensive plan amendment petition is not needed in this case, as the subject property is currently designated neighborhood commercial services. In this regard, the proposed zone change is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, as the proposed C2 zone is better aligned with neighborhood commercial services designation as compared to the current. So my question is, even though I think anybody would agree an apartment is not a neighborhood commercial service, so this plan does not conform with that, but are you saying it's the policy that
If it's closer, it's okay?
It's a really interesting question. And I'm just pulling up, this is the future land use map. So that's what that's referring to, that's in the comprehensive plan. And essentially establishes the vision and the foundation for what zoning should become. There's a number of parcels across the city that are currently in conformance with the vision for the city moving forward. But if they came to the door and any applicant and that had, let's just say a certain zone, but the future land use map, the comprehensive plan says it should be a different, and they came knocking on the door, we would say, yes, that's actually the vision of the city, is to rezone that particular parcel in that direction. I think in this case, you know, when I made the statement that a comprehensive plan change isn't needed, it's essentially because the comprehensive plan is saying, yes, please make this neighborhood commercial services. Ironically, the C2 zone, which allows for a range of commercial uses, also allows by right multifamily development. So it allows the use of multifamily by right. The only conditions that we're looking at is to allow them, you know, more density, more units in that use. So, you know, granting them C2 would grant them by right to develop apartment units, which would be more consistent with the vision and the comprehensive plan. They are asking to be able to build 18, which requires that special condition, that zone change. It's the city that has urged to say, okay, we'd also like to see 15% affordable housing. And that's because it's a stated goal of the city to achieve affordable housing in projects like this. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, but more importantly, this, because we're stating it this way, that it's closer, that avoids us having to do the comprehensive plan amendment petition as opposed to this. But
Correct. Yeah. So
service, should they,
say that question again.
even though it is closer, an apartment is not a neighborhood service, commercial service. So if it's closer, they still don't have to go through the comprehensive plan amendment petition process as opposed to this process.
Correct. So yeah, sometimes when you get a rezone, we also say this needs a comparable comprehensive plan amendment. Let's say you were rezoning something from commercial to industrial, but the comprehensive plan said it should remain commercial. And let's say we in our wisdom say, no, it should go to industrial. Then we also changed the comprehensive plan vision to say the comprehensive plan says industrial, the zoning will say industrial. In this case, the zone change is actually bringing it into alignment with what the comprehensive plan says. And the ironic part is that the comprehensive plan is saying bring it into a commercial neighborhood services type of designation. Those are the C1, C2, C3. They allow a range of commercial uses. But the C2 allows multifamily. We understand that C2 zones and neighborhood commercial service designations, when they're called out in the comp plan, that includes the possibility to build multifamily by right. So hopefully that helps.
That was my question, is like on the table of uses, does this fit into that characteristic?
Correct, yes.
Okay, right.
Multifamily is one of the uses that fits with that designation.
okay.
I know it sounds a little ironic. We're changing the zone to commercial to achieve residential, but suffice to say, this is aligned with the comprehensive plan in that regard.
Okay. All right, I think that's all the questions I have for you. I thank you for
absolutely.
being here tonight and making the presentation.
Yeah, we're a resource if you have any more as conversation goes on.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to allow public comment for this ordinance. We'll start with anyone in chambers. Feel free to just come up to the mic, give your name and an address, and you'll be heard. If you can keep the comments to 4 minutes or less. Thank you.
Neighborhood, I was given a notice about this zoning change. And I'm here to ask that the ordinance committee look upon this proposal favorably. This is an office building in a residential neighborhood, and we now have an opportunity to turn that office building into homes. And obviously, we all are aware of the housing crisis that's going on in Rhode Island right now. Access to housing is a critical issue. We want our community to thrive. And based on those two considerations, having a healthy, thriving community and giving people access to housing, I don't see how the committee could turn down this very reasonable proposal. The only thing that I would change about the proposal is the fact that this proposal allows only the minimum number of units to be affordable. And the city of Cranston is nowhere near any target number in terms of our goal for affordable housing. So I really wish that the city, in considering proposals like this, would work with developers to increase the number of affordable units. All of these proposals have just minimum numbers, and for the health of our community and for the opportunity to include more folks into our community, I would like to see the city in the future working harder to increase affordability. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Saturday, Sunday, traffic coming and going all weekend. Probably 30, 40 more cars. I think DOT should do a traffic study on the weekend. That's what I think should be done.
Thank you. Yes, come forward.
Hi, my name is Peter Geiser, 19 Philmont Ave. And I'm sort of, what do you do with this big building? And I guess in terms of affordability, the fact that we're looking at simply studio apartments and one bedroom is, where do you put your kids? Or I'm assuming this is sort of a focused at not having families. It's a couples or old people. So I get into that category probably very easily. But the affordability thing is always, what does that mean in terms of real affordability? What are these rents going to be? Are we looking at, just professional people? Can school teachers afford? For anything other than a one bedroom. And I'm just throwing things out, just so I'm very curious as to what could be done with this building, and maintain a civility to the community. I'm not a knee-jerk, well, it's a change, so it's a bad thing. Obviously, there's got to be a change to this building. Can we make this a good change for the community? And that's it. I'm more interested in what will this look like? And I'm not down on it, but at the same time, I'm not like, yeah, this is a great idea, because I've seen great ideas be disastrous. Okay, so there I am.
Thank you. Anyone else in chambers like to be heard?
My name is Dave Wilburn.
Sorry, Dave.
Dave Wilburn, WILBURN, Norman Avenue.
I'm sorry, your address again?
14 Norman Avenue.
Thank you.
Where even Davis gave a very impassioned speech, except They're not families. You can't put 20 families in or something like that, call it family. It's basically, it's a refuge. You're right. It's a refuge. That's all that would be. So the idea, because I was involved in a lot of single family building for my career, and a lot of it was subsidized housing, and they were all individual houses, dwellings. No, 50 years in the business, we never jammed 20 families into one small building, never once. This is strictly a monetary benefit to him. That's all that it is. So again, I applaud you. I'm very impassioned that we should accept more people, but give them a home, not a gulag. That's all that's going to be. It's not going to work. And the idea of a traffic control, the statement that you have more traffic when it was office buildings and less when it's residential is a falsehood. I lived across the street for almost 34 years. And we never filled that parking lot when it was office buildings, and the traffic was minimal, and of course, nobody was there after 5 p.m. When people move into this place, whatever the units, 1821, whatever he says, he has no control over who's going to live there. They're going to live there strictly out of absolute necessity. They're not going to think about families or anything like that. It's not going to happen. We all know that. It's too small. And to make it worse, you allowed him to break up 9,000 square feet, which is that lot that he was explaining to you, that he's going to build a single family home. You notice he also did that before he applied for this zone change, because he knew that that would be an obstruction if he tried to do it after. Good move. Very bright move. I say that at minimum, if you want to give them 20 units, 18 units, then make them dig back that 9,000 feet, leave it green and grass. At least those people would have something, because when people have a home, like this woman from Davis said, she's right. But every home has a little yard, a little something to make it a home, not 4 walls and a bed. That doesn't make a home. He's wrong. She's idealistic. God bless him. So the traffic was an issue. That's false, because you're going to have more traffic. We all know that. Everybody in the neighborhood knows that. And you also have a different type of homeowner. It's a passion. You should be a homeowner. Every homeowner who has to pay the taxes and pay the mortgage takes care of their home. I was involved in these, again, in single family, and they were allowed to subsidize. And what happens was somebody comes along and they own the subsidy obligation. They own getting rid of the snow. They get rid of the trash. They mow the lawn. The people that live in those units, and I know they have to live somewhere, don't have to do anything. Nothing. They don't have to remove the trash. They don't have to mow the lawn. They don't have to pick up trash. Nothing. Subsidized housing always does that. But at least they had a home with a backyard. Not this. I don't think it's a good idea. I know it's a bad idea. It's up to you after this.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in chambers that would like to be heard? I seeing none, I'll close the portion. Oh. Yes, please. Address for the record.
Bill DiStefano, 130 Sanctuary Drive, East Greenwich. So I don't know if I know where to start. I bought this building 21 years ago as a rundown office building. I cleaned it up and I sold it to a friend. Friend struggled over the years to keep it full. Pandemic hit, called me and said, I know you like the building. Do you want it? Because we're getting rid of it. I said, yeah, I love the building. So I bought it. It's a very small building in our world, what we're doing, the redevelopments that we do. But I love the building and I think it's a great area. So we bought it. I think the highest and best use is residential, for sure. We've proven that in Providence. We're doing a lot of this. We've done a lot. It's been very successful. We converted a similar larger office, mom and pop office type building on Atwells Ave into apartments. It was extremely successful. And we just converted Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church in Federal Hill into 49 apartments. We're doing the old Citizens Bank on Westminster Street. That bank alone will have 52 apartments in it. This is the way things are going. We have a great need for residential housing. Not everyone can afford to buy a single family house. That's one of the reasons why the apartment market is thriving. The rents are so high because people need a place to live. And we're 10,000 units behind in the state. We need 10,000 over the next 10 years just to catch up with demand. So it was an office building, run down, we gutted it out. We didn't gut it out because we knew for sure we're gonna turn it into apartments. We gutted it out because we know one way or another, we're gonna rent it. We carved off the lot next to it because at the end of the day, yes, it's about making money. We're developers. We're in business to make money. We're not a nonprofit. So I think it'd be great for the city to have the apartments there, but it's not going to be the end of the world if it's not. But if it's an office building, it's going to rent to whomever's in there. It's when we bought it, there were 22 offices in there. There were 3 tenants, but there were 22 offices. So whether it be who's doing eyebrows, hair, massage therapy, psychologist, it will never be a dentist's office. It will never be a doctor's office. It doesn't have the handicap accessibility for that. It'll never be that. So it will be a mom and pop type office building with whatever offices we can get to go in there and whatever sizes we can that will work in the neighborhood. And right now, after the pandemic, everyone's working from home. So it's not going to be an easy task. Not that that's anyone's problem here, but we have a neighbor that talks about not wanting to have apartments in a residential neighborhood, yet wants to have green space for these tenants that they don't want. It's a big contradiction. We don't.
Sir.
We also, we have 41 parking spaces for 18 units. We have absolutely positively no plan to go with more than 18 units. It could be restricted to that, not a problem. It's exactly the way we want 18 and that's all it's going to be. It cannot be any more than that. They would be too tiny. We have 41 spaces. We rent majority 1-bed studio, very few 2-bed units in all of our buildings. 75%, there's one person in the apartment and they have one car. If they have it in the city, there's always a certain percent. Mick does all our rentals that doesn't have a car at all. And then there are people that have a significant other, so there's 2 cars. But 41, it's way over. In Providence, you're required to have 1 per unit. We have more than 2 per unit. So we have an.
Yes, of course. Mick Hogan, yep, 24 Holbrook Ave, Rumford, Rhode Island. And I'm the Vice President of Leasing for the Omni Group. And just a minor correction, this bill is the same 41 parking spaces. We have 37, which still does qualify for 2 per. And I will just say that in my experience of doing this leasing, Bill is correct. What we typically will see with these 1 bedrooms, these are quality apartments. They will generally.
Excuse me, sir. Can you speak into the
Yes,
microphone so
sorry.
that people
Yep,
at home can
coming
hear?
in.
Thank-
So these 1 bedrooms and studios will primarily, and not always, but they're typically single occupant. So we do find that it's usually 1 car. In some cases, there may be 2. In other cases, there's someone who is commuting. So I would say on average, I think Doug had maybe mentioned this before, that Park Ave, they were saying 1.25 spaces. I think even reasonably 1.5 spaces. So you're talking about 27. We have 36. So I think we do have the requisite parking. So just want to clarify that.
We were at 41.
We were.
And then we had to change the size of the parking spaces. So I was wrong, but I was right before. So also in this area, it's important to know that in walking distance, there's hundreds of apartment units, hundreds. Percerns alone on Pontiac Avenue, Willow Glen, Willow Brook, hundreds of apartments. It's very, and there's 6, 8, 10 unit buildings all over the place. So I think that's it. If you have any questions, love to respond.
Thank you. Does anyone on the committee have, Councilman Ferry, Vice President Ferry, sorry.
Thank you. Is there a possibility that there can be a limit to how many people can live in one of the apartments? I mean, so if you rent out a one-bedroom apartment to somebody and they put 5 people in it, is that going to be allowed?
I don't know the answer to that. We've never had that as an issue. We have a strict vetting.
Anybody
process.
here that can answer that question? Council? I'm not asking you, sir. I'm talking about the council on the council.
Sir, we're not going to tolerate that here. We're gonna comport ourselves professionally. Okay?
May I refer to council or planning or anyone, can there be a restriction on how many people can live in an apartment?
From planning's perspective, I don't know if there's any set limit. That might be a building code issue if there is. I can tell you, I mean, they may be cautious because they don't want to answer something that they would then be in a policy where they would have to prejudice themselves against someone. If a couple came in there and then the couple had a baby and suddenly having a baby made them ineligible to live there because there was a 3-person or a 2-person limit in the third. I think that's where that's their domain, where they understand that, you know, they have to be conscious of making the housing equally available. There's the housing equity issues, but that's more of a building code issue. So my answer is that I'm not positive if there is any way to limit the number of people. They could probably speak to, in all of their other uses, what they typically see for these types of units.
Thank you.
As a landlord, can you restrict how many people can live in an apartment?
I don't believe we can. And recently, if you may have read the news that in Narragansett, it was struck down again, where they tried to limit how many people could live in a rental apartment for the colleges. So I'm not a lawyer. I don't know, but we've never had that issue when we've been doing this for years. I mean, they're small. They're not like real big 1-beds where you can kind of set up. So they're small units.
Do you have anything further, Councilman?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilman Donegan?
Thank you. I don't want to put any of the attorneys or solicitors on the spot, but couldn't that potentially by, restricting the number of people potentially run into violations of the Fair Housing Act on discrimination based on something like children or familial status?
Just to expand a little bit on what the gentleman was talking about. There was a similar ordinance in Providence which tried to limit the number of unrelated individuals that could reside in a single unit. That was done largely in response to the problem they were having at Providence College with the students. And the same thing with Narragansett, I believe it was URI students. Interestingly, in Providence, a challenge was brought in the Superior Court. Judge Keogh upheld that Providence ordinance. Judge Taft Carter, Washington County, struck down the Narragansett ordinance. I haven't compared the two to see if they're identical, to see what differences there are. But the short answer is, if you try to place some type of limitation, you're going to be subject to some type of strict scrutiny analysis by the courts, meaning, is there a legitimate underlying reason that you're putting the limitation on? Now, as I said, the ordinances in Narragansett and Providence, I believe, were worded to the effect of limiting unrelated persons from residing together. Didn't apply to a family unit. That opens up the question, how do you define family? So it can get really tangled, really messy, and it could raise issues.
Anything further, Councilman?
I got to follow up because I just remembered something and you confirmed it. We do have in our leases that if any adult that's living in the apartment has to be on the lease. So if we rent to a single person and they have a significant other that wants to move in, they have to go through our same process and they have to be added to the lease. So they have to qualify the same way we qualify everyone.
And it's essentially, we know there's a relation.
Did anyone else have questions for Councilman Hawes?
Thank you to the developers. What is the rough amount of monthly rent that you will be charging on the apartments or the units? And we kind of know what the formula is in terms of the affordable housing part, which you can say it's affordable, but it really, it could be affordable to you, could not be affordable to someone else and the other person and vice versa, right?
Right.
And so curious what your rough rent would be in terms of both those units, affordable and non-affordables in that complex.
Well, this is our first venture into the area. We did a little preliminary study, but we're not positive, but we're in the 1,300 to 1,400 range for one bed. If I remember correct.
That's correct. And Doug was kind enough to hand me the rents that are handed down by the affordable 8% AMI, which we'd be held to. And just looking at these numbers, which do include a subsidy for utilities, these numbers, studio and one beds are, again, we haven't set the prices, but they're more or less closely in line with what the market probably is.
And I guess as a follow-up to that, the 15% of affordable housing that's been added to, that is part of this whole consideration right now. Just curious if you would if we're keeping it at possibly 18, let's just hypothetically say that that's what it is, because you
We
both
are.
actually said it would be 18 and nothing more than that.
Nothing more.
So that would be roughly three units,
Three.
depending on how you're rounding up, right? Just curious, would you be even open to consider increasing that 15% to 20%?
Well, the problem is, like a lot of the neighbors were upset about the affordable housing part of it, certain neighbors. And as staff had pointed out, it wasn't our choice. It was what they needed to do to keep up with what their, and as I understand that you guys are over your quota for affordable. I know someone.
I highly doubt that, but I could be wrong. Please.
Yes, thank you.
With being brief on the issue of where we stand with affordable housing, in terms of home ownership stock, we are below the 10% threshold. However, there's another threshold that is important to consider, and that if Cranston has enough rental stock as a whole, the percentage of rental compared to home ownership allows us to look at the rental percentage. And so we look at the rental percentage is what keeps us above the eligible threshold. And when I say eligible, it means that if we slip below that, the city will become subject to comprehensive permits, which is an aggressive affordable housing action in which an applicant can come in and essentially say, we're going to put your zoning aside, I'm going to build the way I want. And that's what a comprehensive permit is. And I'm being very just blunt and short. We are very close to slipping below the rental threshold. We are above it, but we're close to slipping below. That is why, as a city, we're very careful. If we add rental units in any project, if we don't keep adding affordable rentals, we will slip below that threshold. The threshold is at 15%, and I think by the last calculations, I think we were at something like 15.2%. So if we keep adding rentals without adding affordables at the same time, then we make ourselves subject to a comprehensive permit. I hope that answers your question.
It does, and I'm just curious. So even if, for my own knowledge and everyone even watching and reading about this in general, is that if we do increase it from 15 to 20%, that would really add another unit, one more unit, right? Because if you're 18%, you're talking about 3 units or so, or depending on how you're rounding up, because you said you round up. And so would the developers have any objection to, if it's at 18 units and you bring it up to 20%, how would you be open to that?
You're asking the developer that question?
Yeah, because then that would be 4 units versus,
We would have to go back to the drawing board and look at making them all studio apartments, which we wouldn't want to do, but it has to be affordable to build. And as everyone knows, you don't have to be in construction to know what's going on with the economy and inflation every year. The cost of construction is to the moon. And if you watch the news, you know it. So it gets to the point where we almost didn't do it for 3 and said, now we'll just pass and just keep it an office building. Because if we can't make money, what's the point? It's an exercise.
so what unit is going to be the affordable? The 3 studios?
We didn't really hone in on exactly which units.
I'm just curious which
Yeah,
one it would
we
be.
we didn't say, okay, we're gonna do this. I know we said probably 1 on each floor. Something like that to make it, you know.
Oh, please come to the mic.
The location of the affordables isn't something that we would regulate. It's actually something Rhode Island Housing would review. So I'm think the applicant can't specify exactly because they may be subject to Rhode Island Housing talking about how their vision would be in terms of spreading them through the units.
But
That's
what we
something that
can
they-
regulate is increasing that 15 to 20 if we wanted to.
And that's a local, so we asked for 15 because we think it's important to keep up. 15% is what we asked for in the most recent comparable project, which was that Legion Bowl project. City staff is not opposed to more, but I think we were trying to be consistent with what we've asked other projects, if that makes sense.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. If I can just say a few words, Chairman.
Could I just follow up one quick thing? Just to be more. Just to be more specific, we specifically carved off that other single-family house lot to help make this work. Instead of having excess parking that was useless, we carved that off to help make it work.
Thank you. So I'm going to hold off on my additional questions so we can move on to the public. No, that's okay. Just in case we were to make this again, if we want to keep it 1 unit, then that's the 41 spaces, right? Whereas if
37.
Sorry,
actually. Now,
37. Sorry,
It was 41, we had to change.
that's
the
right,
size.
just mentioned that earlier, yep, so the 37. Whereas if you were suddenly to recreate at least a 1-bedroom into a 2-bedroom, then that would increase your number of parking spaces that you would need, or no?
No, the parking code is 2 spaces per unit, regardless of whether the units are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bedroom. We understand that since they're largely 1-bedroom and studio, in fact, entirely 1-bedroom and studio, that average number of cars is not likely to hit 2, but the code says 2 per unit. So regardless of bedroom count, they still owe us 2 per unit. Does that make sense?
It does. And then I'll reserve my comments regarding this matter after we continue with public hearing.
Thank you. Councilwoman Renzulli.
Thank you. I'm just want to kind of piggyback off of something that Councilwoman Vargas asked. So if, I know you don't have the exact number, if you're looking at $1,300 to $1,400 for a 1-bedroom affordable unit, did I understand that correctly?
No,
No.
our market rent.
Your market rent would be $1,300 to $1,400. So what would the affordable number be for that?
In our business, when we say 13, it's $1,395, $1,495.
So this is 2-person, one bed, I believe here is 1547, and those are rates set by Rhode Island Housing.
Okay, so those rates are affordable is higher than the market? Because it goes
Right,
by per
that's
person.
the
So,
combined income.
so the affordable unit could possibly be more expensive than the market rate one? Is that what somebody's saying to me? If 2 people live there?
That, yeah.
Rhode Island Housing would say that this is their maximum amount that could cost. And when they're giving this rent, keep in mind that this number from Rhode Island Housing, which a 1-person household would be 1,354. A two-person is 1,547. So the number of people in the household is what increases it. That includes utilities. So Rhode Island Housing says that their rent plus utilities can't add up to more than that number. However, if the applicant wanted to rent for less than that, they're welcome to. That's a maximum that Rhode Island Housing is instituting, making sure it can't go above that amount. If for some reason they had someone that came in and, you know, they said, hey, Rhode Island Housing says our max rent is 1,500, your policy is 13, they could allow that person to rent for less than Rhode Island Housing's maximum limit. Looks like that answers your question.
Kind of, but not real. I see the logic, but I don't see how that actually makes sense in real life
Well,
for anybody.
in real life, you have two people there and they're working, they're not going to qualify. That's our experience. It's not going to qualify.
I'm just more so trying to figure out how adding one more unit at the affordable rate would lower your profit so much that it would not be worth it for you to do this project anymore. Because that's kind of what you just said to Councilwoman Vargas, and that doesn't make sense to me. And maybe I'm ignorant, that's why I'm asking so many questions, but it doesn't seem like it's that much difference.
Well, when we have a deed restricted unit, then it's not something we can just rent to anyone who comes. Someone comes with a nice resume, a nice application, they have a nice job, they're doing well, so-and-so, they have great credit. I mean, we put them through the ringer. We can't rent to them. And that's part of the problem.
But there are
It's gonna
not
limit
plenty
who
of
we can
people who
rent
would
to.
fit into that qualification of to buy and have affordable housing. Like we have plenty of people who need affordable housing, so your unit would be filled and you could possibly be charging more. I don't understand.
Yeah,
I just don't I understand how maybe it's not ideal for putting through credit reports or whatever perhaps, but that's kind of high rent anyway.
Well,
It's not
let me give you an
subsidized, it's not low income.
Let me give you an example. He may go through 50 applications before he picks one that we'll accept. In this case, it could be hundreds, because with today's, employment, people are making good money. So there could be so many people that just don't qualify. So it's going to limit who we can rent to, how many different applicants would be acceptable for a deed restricted unit.
And that's right. It's basically if you deed restrict the unit, which is the purpose, is to set these units aside for people that really need them. Just to give you the numbers, current numbers in Cranston is if you wanted to be eligible for an affordable unit at the threshold that we've set here, which is 80% of the area median income, a one-person household can't make more than 54,000. A two-person household can't make more than 61,000. So that gives you a sense of that if they deed restrict them, they're limited to a pool of people that would also need to be verified through Rhode Island Housing. Their income eligibility would be verified through Rhode Island Housing. There would be an agency that would monitor it. But I think what he's trying to relay is they are limiting their pool of applicants. I guess it's up to anyone's determination if a one person making 54,000 is truly limiting or not. That would be.
I guess if we need affordable housing, it's because we have identified that we have a population of people who would qualify for affordable housing. First-year teachers don't make $54,000 a year. So, I mean, first, second, 5-year state workers don't make $54,000 a year. So therefore, I don't think that they would have a problem filling one more unit, and it's not, you know what I mean? You're still going to get qualified people with good credit who can pay their rent, I think. So I would agree with Councilwoman Vargas on that. Thank you.
Councilwoman Vargas?
Sorry, I hate to keep dragging on this, but is confidential information for Rhode Island Housing to actually provide to the council, even if it's 2-3 years down the line for any development that comes before us, that we vote saying, yes, they came before us, there's a stipulation, it's on the deed that there's that 15% of it will be affordable housing. I'm just curious on that accountability.
I think there is going to be some type of confidentiality with that. We have very limited experience with this market rate affordable. But we can look into that issue for you, but it's probably going to be confidential to get that information.
I
But
appreciate
there
it.
are monitoring agencies that they have to go through that verify their income, that's the Rhode Island housing process.
Thank you. Through the solicitors, I don't want to double. question
Ask your
about-
question again, Councilwoman, because I think I understand what you're getting at. So I apologize. What is your question again?
Sure. So, as we're voting on any development, whether it's this one or any one of them, and they're coming before us and stating that in fact they would provide 15% of their development to affordable housing,
Okay.
down the line, the accountability or the enforcement, what I'm trying to get at is if someone comes before us and that's what we are voting on, who's to say that in fact, 2-3 years from now, they are now not at 15%, they could be at 10%, right? Or 5. So where is that fine line of enforcement?
When there's a deed restriction on these developments. Or it's for a period of years. Usually it's a 99-year restriction. Long time. They can't do it. I mean, if they do it, they jeopardize financing. They jeopardize the property. I mean, Rhode Island Housing does have an enforcement mechanism to monitor these things, but the reality is there are confidentiality provisions built into that to protect, obviously, the renter and their particular profile. But one of the things that I've heard here tonight that I know that I've talked with Councilman Ferry about this in another context, as well as the council president. And I was glad to hear what the planning department had to say tonight, where they broke out the percentage threshold of affordable housing relative to apartments, as opposed to the minimum 10% threshold for low to moderate income housing and affordable housing as a whole at 10%. That we're not at 10%. So for those of you who are not familiar, I believe it's Roger Williams University that hosts the Housing Works think tank that produces that annual book that can provide you with much of that information. I'm happy to forward it to the council people, not in the context of considering this, but if you look at imposing, in this case, it's affordable apartments as a percentage of the overall project, if you will. Having worn the other hat for a developer, there is a certain economic feasibility and infeasibility, and that's the test that courts would look at, particularly with respect to affordable housing as a whole. And it's it's a different analysis for a for-profit developer versus a not-for-profit developer, without getting into that framework. The planning department stood before you tonight and said, look, we target 15%. You've heard from the developer who said, they have economic feasibility concerns and infeasibility concerns, which I don't know the economics of their project. It's not my business to get into that. But I would draw the analogy for the council to impact fees. Every developer that comes before you, there's a certain economic impact, and I'm not talking about this development in general, in developing, homes and whatever. When municipalities get behind in terms of their imposition of impact fees, oftentimes they try to play catch up by overburdening subsequent developers with impact fees on a particular project. In a loose sort of way, if you draw the analogy between, saying the planning department says we want 15% of these to be affordable. You're not putting any more of a burden on this particular developer with respect to this particular project. You're essentially making them do their fair share. And planning obviously has a policy that they've told you about tonight to make sure that subsequent developers developing apartment rentals in Cranston do their fair share as well. And that's laudable, because it is important that we stay above that threshold for the very reasons that the planning department has set forth for you tonight. It would turn in, in layman's parlance, to an absolute circus, and you don't want that. The overall discussion of the 10% threshold on affordable housing is not before us tonight. It's a separate issue. And it's a problem around the state, but we have a housing problem. We have a rental stock issue in this state, plain and simple. So I hope I've answered your question to some degree. If I haven't, I'm happy to assist.
Thank you so much. So again, Chairman, I'll reserve my comments on how I'm going to be voting on this later on, because I think we haven't finished with the rest of the public hearing. So thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone on the committee or in council have any further questions specifically for the developer? Okay, well, at this time, I'm gonna close public comment in chambers and go to Zoom to see if there's any public comment. If you would like to speak, please just hit the raised hand icon.
No public comment.
Thank you. At this time, I'll close public comment. And I will entertain a motion at this time. I think we have a few options before us. I'm not going to tell anybody what to motion for, but we can vote to approve it, vote to deny it. But either way, and let me just get clarification from council. Either way, does this go to the full council, even if it's denied?
Yes.
Or we could also vote to move it forward without a recommendation. Councilman Donegan, I see you eagerly have a hand up.
Thank you. But not a lawyer, and our city council attorney can answer this, but my understanding though, that if the council were to send this with a negative recommendation to the full council, it would require a 2/3 majority of the city council to approve. If the committee were to send this to the full city council with no recommendation, it would take the city council a 2/3 majority to approve it.
I believe that's correct.
So if this committee, which I'm not a member of, were to send this with anything less than a positive recommendation, it would require a 2/3 majority to approve.
That's correct.
Thank you, Councilman. So at this time, I'll entertain any motions. Councilman Vargas?
Yeah, so I guess my question is, whether it's through our council attorney or the city solicitor, given the fact that the recommendation and everything here noted said that it's either 18 to 21 units, and the developers are saying that they don't want the 21 units, they actually just want the 18. Would that be where are we on that? Is that something that we as a council
could
would
be a
be able to
condition of
stipulate,
approval.
initiate that?
But it should not be a reason for denial. It can be it's a distinction with a difference.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Ferry?
I was going to make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And any discussion? Councilman Ferry, Vice President Ferry.
That's all right. I just want to say that we have a planning commission that approved this 6-2. We have a planning department that has spent a lot of time on it, and they seem to be on top of what needs to be done to bring this project to fruition. We have a housing crisis in the state. We have affordable housing shortage in the city. It's for residential. Let's face it, nobody rents office space today. So you have a building that's empty that they want to spend a lot of money on fixing up to put people into apartments that they can hopefully afford. And they have a lot of experience doing this. I would vote in favor of approving this project tonight. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilman Donegan?
Thank you, Chairman. Like I just said, I'm not a voting member of this committee, but to me, this is it's a no-brainer. It's not going to change the physical landscape of or the footprint of the building itself. They are, and credit to the planning department and to the developer for being willing to do so, helping to reach our city's affordable housing ambitions. It's sustainable. It's on a RIPTA line, which also helps hopefully reduce traffic. That this is, I would strongly encourage everyone on the committee to pass this unanimously.
There's no comment at this time.
For what it's worth, I'm a member of the city council. I do not vote on the ordinance committee. No.
Correct. Councilman, oh, no. Anyone else have any comments before we vote? Yes, Councilwoman Mock.
Thank you. Just echoing what the Council Vice President has said, as well as Council Member Donegan, and even the solicitor who said it as well. You know, there's definitely a housing crisis, right? There's a need for apartments, and then you know, I think that there's also, oh, I know that there's a just in general apartments, whether it's regular apartments, whether it's affordable apartments throughout the entire country, in our state, here in our city. The fact that, you know, there's 15% of it is going to be affordable housing. Would I wish to have seen an increase from 15 to higher? Absolutely. Not too long ago, we just discussed homelessness issues happening right here in our own city, and pallets going up as well for members of our community to have no place to lay their head at night. And so the way that this has been proposed to us, given the intense recommendation from the planning as well. And I want to thank the both of you and everyone else on the staff for the diligent work on this. But I will be in support of this development. And I hope that this gets passed before the full council. Would I wish to have it more 2-bedroom or so? I would have, but the way it stands, I'm at least fine with the fact that I know it's a very small space, but I want to also make sure that you're all working with the neighborhood as well in terms of any possible problems or anything at all that may arise as the development is taking place as well, and the buffering and consider the trees as well. And when you are putting together the actual landscape. So I will be supporting this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Renzulli.
Thank you. I agree with my colleagues. I was able to go to the site walk, and I did look up and go actually physically go to Federal Hill to look at some of the developers' work. So I think that they do build lovely, you know, apartment buildings, and we do need housing stock. I do wish that one more affordable unit could be there, because I don't believe that affordable units, you know, by definition are actually necessarily affordable and going to help the people that actually need a place to live. But if that's not, you know, our intent of amending this, then I understand. I want to see this developed. I would love to see the accidents. I am going to vote positive for this, because I want this to get to the full council so that other members do have a vote. And in the meantime, I do want to get that data from the police about the accidents that occur around that area. I do know the major concern is traffic. So I don't know if you have any kind of an appetite to get any kind of small numbers to kind of make the neighbors at ease, because I can tell you that, you know, people that are upset about something going on in their neighborhood often stay upset, even after this could be developed, and they live there and they're not going to go away, and they shouldn't go away, and they're going to continue to come here, and we're going to continue to bring up the problems. And I want this all to go well. So that's something I would definitely consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Before we vote, I just wanted to say a few words. I'm really torn on this. I have seen their work. I think they do a wonderful job. And I think they would create a building that looks nice in the area. That's if I'm looking at it in a vacuum. That lot has a debilitating, building on it now that's debilitated. They're gonna put a nicer building there. I'm all for that. The only problem I have is not so much, is more in general. And it goes with the principle that Cranston, pretty much this area, and specifically that area I've looked at, it has 90% single family houses. And I feel that we in Cranston need to protect single family housing. Cranston, despite what others may want it to be, is a suburb of Providence. After World War II, that was how the western side of the city got built. And people bought that knowing that. And it's not a bad thing. Cranston being a suburb, it's not a bad word. It's a good thing. However, we do need to balance that against this housing crisis that we have. And certainly adding more units to the stock helps that. And specifically for the neighborhood, I have an issue that this is going to be done in a large majority single family zoned area, because these residents, when they bought their house, said, all right, looking at the zoning, I'm only going to either live next to an office or single family houses. Now we're flipping that on them, and we have to have a good reason. So like I said, it's a balancing act, and I'm really torn. It increases density, which drives home prices down, but we do want to add market stock. If this weren't on Pontiac Avenue directly, it would be a no-brainer. I would say no, but it is. So I am torn. I think that this isn't Providence, so I don't want to compare specifically us to Providence, because I want to respect the fact that Cranston is a suburb, and that's okay. And I also respect the developers saying that, yes, they are developers. This is America. They're in this for profit, and I understand that. So, and I'm glad that they did say, oh, no, not at this time, sir. I am glad that they did say that they were fine with the 18 units, because I think we should restrict it to that. That's what they wanted. That's what they're going to build. I hate when we approve things here, and I believe planning has said this. Well, we're approving them to do C2. We're not just approving that they build this specific building. We're approving them for C2, so we don't want the rug getting pulled out from us either. Whatever we approve is what they should build. So no one should have to have the need to come back and add more units. That makes absolutely zero sense to me. I'm not in that field, so I'll defer. But they said they want 18. We need to amend that to give them the 18. So I do want I'm still really not sure where I want to go with this, but I do think it's important that the entire council takes a look at it. So for that reason, I am going to vote to pass this on to the full council. And I don't think it would be fair to put them under a two-thirds burden. So for that reason, I will be voting to put this forward. But like I said, I strongly feel that single family zoning is important in Cranston. And this could create a precedent when they come for the next one, and they come for the next one. Because right now, I think it was referred to as, it was a great term. Special rezones. Special rezones. I mean, basically, it could be considered spot zoning. That's illegal. And we have to be careful of that. So every application that comes before us, we have to respect the comprehensive plan. And I do appreciate that this does put us closer to what the comprehensive plan is. So I'm a little torn, but I am going to put this forward to I'm going to vote to pass it through. Is there any further comment? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Riley? Council Vice President Ferry?
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas?
Yes.
Councilman Campiano?
Yes.
Oh, and I'm sorry, Councilwoman Renzulli is here. She arrived.
Councilwoman Renzulli?
Yes.
Sorry.
Thank you. So that now passes on to the city council meeting as the planning department alluded to before.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, if I can, who was the first and the second on that motion? It was at least an hour or so ago.
I said approve.
Councilman
Richard said-
Campopiano.
I beg your pardon. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to the next on the docket was ordinance 10-22-01, sponsored by Council President Paplaskas. He has asked that that be continued. I will entertain a motion to continue that 1 month.
Motion to continue.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Council Vice President Ferry.
Yes.
Councilwoman Vargas.
Yes.
Council Campiano,
Yes.
Councilwoman Renzulli.
Yes.
Next, we have ordinance 10-22-02. Titled Administration and Personnel, Municipal Court, Appointment, Term, and Qualification of Judge in Municipal Court, sponsored by Councilwoman Marino and Vargas. Is anyone in the public that would like to be heard on this tonight? Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to be heard on this tonight?
No public comment.
Thank you. At this time, I'll close public comment on this issue and entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And I will allow Councilwoman Vargas to discuss it.
Sure, thank you. Sorry, I'm just bringing it up on my computer. Oh. All right, so the ordinance that's come before us this evening, it is for the sole purpose, as you can see on there, we have 5 associate judges, and it is to reduce it from 5 to 3. In addition to that, what this ordinance will also do is reduce the amount of, increase the minimum of years of experience from 2 to 10 years of experience in order to serve on the, as an arbitrator here, as a municipal court judge here in the city of Cranston. And so we have, as we had discussion, probably sometime last year, as a city, I think we're the only city that has one of the most amount of associate judges, municipal judges in the city. In conversations with the Chief Judge Matt Smith, he agrees with the need to reduce the number of judges and agrees with the change to the 10 years minimum of years in practice as an attorney. The ordinance before us this evening, I was one of the ones who actually voted to increase it last year. And in looking at this ordinance, there's just absolutely no need to have 5 associate judges at all in the city. I think we would do fine with just having it reduced to 3 associate judges and increasing the years of experience as well. There is, I don't think that would interrupt at all municipal court in terms of cases that are coming before us. And so I just want to leave it at that. And I welcome any one of you to chime in on this. Otherwise, I'm ready for a roll.
Councilwoman Renzulli?
I just have a question. I'm wondering where the jump from 2 to 10 years experience came from. That's a big, I'm sure Councilwoman Marino can answer that.
Yes, Councilwoman Marino.
Sure, thank you. 10 years is standard, and specifically with respect to a municipal court judge, where the 10 years came from is that in the state of Rhode Island, for you to just be an arbitrator, which is a much lesser degree than a judge, you need a minimum of 10 years of practice as a lawyer in good standing. So that's why to have 2 years is really insane, to be honest. And so, and it's not, it's important to keep in mind, there's not going to be a, drought of potential candidates with the 10 years at all. Yep.
Thank you.
If I can add to that, we want experience as well, attorneys that are coming in as judges. I mean, just because it's municipal court doesn't mean that just 2 years is going to check the box and do it. I personally would feel confident that any case coming before any municipal judge, whether it's the chief judge, associate judge in general, has that area of expertise to be able to bring it into the actual city before they hear any of our cases.
Thank you. And because I'm not a lawyer, this is why I'm deferring to 2 lawyers in front of me and 2 lawyers over there. Is there any significance? Would it be important for the chief judge to have perhaps more experience than a associate judge, or no, that doesn't really matter? 10 years is 10 years and that is 10 years.
If I can, Mr.
Please.
Chairman, I certainly welcome Mr. Videcki has been involved in this a decade longer than I have. There's a certain amount of emotional intelligence that comes from experience in general. Arbitrators, as Councilwoman Marino alluded to, have to be practicing for 10 years. And there's something to be said for the skills required. You can watch some of the judges on television that you see, and it makes for sensational television. But if you look at someone like Judge Caprio, he lets the game come to him a little bit because he's seasoned enough to do so. You hear some very interesting things in your lower level courts, more so than you do in your higher level courts, and folks advocate for themselves, and usually they're quite emotional and passionate and perhaps even irrational about it. And you have to have a certain amount of emotional intelligence as a judge to sort through that. I think back at my career, I don't think I would have had that 2 years into it. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, just to expand a little bit on what Steve's saying, I've been in this business a very, very long time, and the judicial selection process on the state level, and I am talking from the Rhode Island Supreme Court, Superior Court, District Court, doesn't have any such requirement. And that's been a subject of debate, I think Steve would agree, for many years amongst the bar, amongst lawyers. Some say, you should not be appointed to the Superior Court or the District Court unless you've been in some type of private practice. I know from my experience, and Steve would probably agree with this, that maybe I would say 30% of the judges that are appointed were never in private practice. They were either in some state capacity, some were clerks, others did not practice law. I won't put any names out there for the public, but there are some. And some of them have been, in my opinion, have been great judges. Others, not so great. But my position has always been, I think that experience counts. I really do. And I think 10 years is a fair amount of time for someone to become, let's say, seasoned. It's not just, it isn't just knowledge of the law that counts. And Steve pointed out that there's a certain emotional component to it. There's a certain social component to it. It takes a lot of different qualities. And I don't know that you can really attain those in 2 years in this field. I think it takes longer than that. So I think Councilwoman Marino and Councilwoman Vargas's idea to go from 2 to 10 is a pretty good one.
But to be a chief judge doesn't need any more than that.
No, they don't differentiate that way. No.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Vice President Ferry.
I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor to this.
Me too.
Thank you. Yeah, I think last year or the year before when Chief Judge Smith said that that was expecting a backlog. And I think that's why we all gave that, but I mean, he's come forward and said that this is sufficient to run his court and manage his court. I think he's done a fabulous job, and I would defer to his expertise on this. As for the experience, I 100% agree. Me in my first year to me now, there's a big difference. There is the social aspect, especially from a judge, and more so in municipal court than in the district or superior courts, because most of those litigants, a lot of them are represented. Most people coming to municipal court are what they refer to as pro se. They're representing themselves and they don't really know the law. So maybe I think this is a step in the right direction. And even though the state doesn't require it and they'll throw a robe at anybody, I think the city of Cranston can do better. So I would definitely support this. Thank you. And if there's no further comment, I will ask the clerk to take the roll.
Councilman Riley,
Yes.
Ferry.
Yes.
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 Councilwoman Anzuli.
Yes.
And with nothing else on the docket, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? All right, thank you. This meeting has concluded.